You ready for a rant? 'Cause you're getting a rant. Confession time, I really like doing little rants about topics that interest me. I don't do it very often, but I'd like to actually do it more often. I just sometimes don't have anything to rant about because I'm a generally positive person. But there's this one topic that's been really grinding my gears lately that I want to weigh in on and give my 2 cents about. And that topic is the idea that art is currently in crisis, which I do not believe. To make it very clear, when I say art, I'm talking mostly about popular media. Films, literature, TV, music, video games. Those are the big ones. And right now on social media, on YouTube, I see a lot of talk about the idea that these areas of popular entertainment media and art are somehow in crisis. I'll give you an example from a film critic that I really like and respect. I don't mean to single him out, but this is a great example of this. There's a film critic on YouTube called Chris Stuckman. He's pretty big, you might have heard of him, and I generally like his reviews. Stuckman is currently working on an indie horror film that he's been making as his directorial debut, and I'm really excited to see it. But when it comes to his reviews, every 4th or 5th review, Chris Stuckman uses the phrase, "They don't make movies like this anymore." And the fact that he keeps using that phrase proves that it's not true, because they're clearly making them like this now. Otherwise, he couldn't keep saying it. When he uses the phrase, he's talking about films with practical effects, horror movies that go back to practical effects, action movies that are actually well directed, well written, and well thought out. He's talking about films with a bit of heart, films that feel the way that cinema felt in the 80s and the 70s. And I totally get his argument, because when he's saying it, he's probably got images of Marvel movies and big Disney properties in his head. And I totally understand that Disney rules the roost when it comes to Hollywood. And a lot of Disney stuff is very vapid and empty and over-sanitized. I think we all know that that's true. But there's also so many great films out there that are doing very, very new things and also harkening back to the great golden age, old wonderful days. And those are the films that he keeps mentioning. So the fact that he says they don't make him like this anymore proves that they actually do. Another example is a TikTok that I saw that went viral a few months ago, where there's this guy sitting in his car having a little crisis moment where he talks about how everything is boring now. He can't enjoy any form of media. All the music he listens to sounds the same. All the films are the same film. All the TV shows are the same TV show. It's pretty funny, and it's unarguably relatable. But then I saw another viral TikTok that stitched it and gave examples of all the great films, artists, musicians, TV shows, books, etc. that are bucking the trend, that are doing something experimental, that are interesting. And the argument that this TikTok is making is that you just need to go and look for it. And that's what I want to talk about here now. I absolutely agree with what that person is saying. Art is not in crisis. We're just maybe getting a bit lazy when it comes to looking for it. Disney can pay big money for advertising space. The stuff that gets shoved down our throats, the stuff we see in ads, the stuff we see on billboards, that's all the boring stuff. But if you hunt for it, you find incredible things all of the time. Art is not in crisis. Right now, we're living through a time where some of the greatest filmmakers, writers, video game developers are working. It's an incredible time to be a fan of art. If you take video games, for example, you've got massive properties made by really bland companies like Ubisoft. You've got 10,000 Call of Duties. You've got every kid playing Fortnite, which I've never played. It might be amazing, I don't know. And then you've got this amazing wealth of incredible indie games that are being put out on Steam, on the Nintendo Switch. So many amazing indie games. I honestly can't keep up with how many fantastic indie games there are out there. And what's weird is that these games get a lot of attention, a lot of press, a lot of big publications covering them. So video games are not in crisis. There are so many amazing indie games out there that do get a lot of attention. And rightly so, they deserve it. You do not have to play AAA games. There are enough experimental, strange, boundary-pushing indie games out there to keep you busy until the day you die. And then there's cinema. The fact that most of my favorite films of all time actually came out in the past 5 to 10 years says a lot. I know that Marvel has become very, very boring and formulaic, and we're all pretty sick of Disney at this point. But you can't deny how amazing the Spider-Verse films are. They are some of the best animated films in the history of animation, and animation has been around for a long time. But Into and Across the Spider-Verse are some of the most beautiful animated films ever created. Not just in their animation, but also in their writing and in their soundtracks. They're perfect animated films. Horror right now, despite the fact that I and most people don't actually like the term elevated horror, horror is seeing a renaissance. So many of the best horror films of all time have come out just recently. My favorite horror film ever is Hereditary. And in fact, Ari Aster is a great example of how great filmmaking is right now, because just recently, his third film, Beau is Afraid, hit the box office. I don't know how well it did, I haven't looked at any stats, but Beau is Afraid is an absolute masterpiece. It's an incredible Kafkaesque fever dream of a film that I loved so much. Beau is Afraid is a perfect example of how cinema is doing just fine if you go and watch the right films. Instead of watching Ant-Man 5, go watch Beau is Afraid. One of the best films of this year, one of the most trippy, strange, experimental, Kafkaesque things you'll ever see. An amazing masterpiece of a film, starring one of the best actors alive today, directed by one of the best filmmakers working today. It's all out there for you to see, is my point. And then there's music. Now, I'm a metalhead, so I guess I don't really need to worry about this because there is so much great music out there for metalheads and kids who like punk. Like, oh my god. So if people are getting bored by the current pop music scene, get into metal, get into punk, get into prog rock, get into weird experimental avant-garde rock music. And you don't need to go through rock and metal if that's not your cup of tea. There are some incredible hip-hop artists out there right now. Folk music is doing really well. And then you've got brilliant electronic subgenres. Like a few years ago, everyone was riding the wave of 80s nostalgia, and out of that came genres like chiptune and synthwave. I love chiptune and synthwave music, so go listen to those. But I do think my relationship to music is something I'd like to see more people take on board, even though that sounds very egotistical. But I have a set selection of music review publications that I check every single day. I have a Spotify account, and at least once a day I download a brand new album. In fact, most of the time, 90% of the time, I only listen to music that came out in the year that I'm currently in. So everything I listen to right now came out in 2023 because I always want to listen to the newest stuff. I never want to rest on my laurels and listen to the stuff I grew up on, listen to the stuff I enjoyed as a kid. I'm not going to be that person. No. I am always going to know the new stuff. I always want to know what the new bands, the new artists and musicians are putting out. I cannot get bored by my music. I cannot sit back and listen to the stuff that I grew up on. I'm not going to be that person. So for me, there's Sputnik Music and Angry Metal Guy. Those are the two big publications that I love for alternative music. Angry Metal Guy is a great blog with a selection of talented writers who review new albums every week. Probably 5 to 6 new albums every single week, and that's a lot of stuff for me to dig into. Death metal, black metal, punk rock music, prog rock. I listen to like a new album every day. Like at least 5 new albums a week. I listen to a lot of new music and I never stop because there's always more. And then we come to books, which is my area of expertise. And I'm really grateful to the publishing industry, especially the publishing scene in the UK right now, because there are so many amazing indie publishers offering so much experimental stuff that would just get passed over by all of the big name publishers. But even the big name publishers are putting out some really cool stuff. So when you've got Cypher Press putting out experimental queer fiction, when you've got Charco Press putting out exclusively stuff in translation from Latin American writers, when you've got Haunt, who publish really cool gothic and horror stuff, When you've got Viper, who are publishing some of the best thrillers and also gothic horror novels out there, Pushkin Press, Gallic Books, Fitzcarraldo Editions, Archipelago Books, Picador, all of these amazing publishing houses, large and small, and more that I've just completely forgotten about because this is all off the top of my head, these people are putting out amazing works. From queer writers, from undervalued writers of colour, from writers who are from working class backgrounds who have unique perspectives on society and politics. Works in translation from all around the world, from Chile to Japan and everything in between. There is so much great fiction out there. So many incredible works of feminist fiction, of transgender fiction, of fiction from people of all different walks of life, religions, races, backgrounds. It goes on and on and on. And if people feel like fiction is getting a bit stale, maybe they're reading too many Matt Haig books. Matt Haig is the fucking worst. Stop reading J.K. Rowling, stop reading Matt Haig, and start reading books put out by people like Charco Press and Cypher Press. Read indie books from incredible writers. Broaden your genre horizons to weird horror fiction, gothic fiction, thrillers, fantasy, science fiction. Learn what the world has to offer. Go hunting. Visit YouTube channels like mine where I try my best to talk about books that people aren't talking about. And there are channels like mine for video games and music and films and TV shows. And I don't know anything about TV. I don't watch much TV. I cannot keep up with all of the great music, books and films and video games coming out all of the time. I do not like this constant argument, this weird rhetoric, this lie that's going around that media and art are boring and are in some kind of a crisis because of Disney and other big corporations that throw the dull stuff down our throats. Just duck under all the stuff that Disney throws at you. Stop reading Matt Haig, and you'll see so many great albums to listen to, books to read, films to watch. There's so much out there. Right now, we are in a golden age of art and media, where, as I said, I can't keep up with all the great video games that I want to play. I can't afford them. I can't afford to keep going to the cinema to seeing the coolest, most experimental, weird horror films that are out there. Authors from all around the world are offering us amazing stories, the kinds of things we couldn't even have dreamed of. And you've got people on TikTok saying everything's boring now. Go look for it. You've got the internet. And you've got people like Chris Stuckman saying they don't make them like this anymore when they do, constantly. I only named one film director, Ari Aster. That's the only one I named, and his films absolutely floor me. Right now in the worlds of animation and filmmaking, there are things being done that have never been done before. Have you seen Mad God? Mad God is one of the most incredible, horrific, wonderful, beautiful, disgusting things I've ever seen. Go watch Mad God. If you think films are done, films are in crisis, films are boring now, go watch Mad God. Please. I know I've talked a lot about horror, but that kind of is my wheelhouse. I love horror fiction, I love horror films, and I love heavy metal music. And when it comes to those areas alone, there is too much to keep up with. So I can't even imagine what it's like for the happier, more colourful stuff. Jesus, there's some good stuff out there. Constantly incredible books, films. I could go on and on and on. I'm talking in circles. I just want people to stop with this narrative that art is in crisis, that there's nothing new and weird and experimental and fresh anymore. Art is always fresh. You've just got to look for it and unsubscribe from Disney Plus. I don't know what else to tell you. I love art more than anything else, and I never stop looking for good shit. You just got to do the same thing. Rant over. Subscribe for books.